Hey guys, it's Greg from BitGoblin again, and for today's video, I figured that since I'm in my new house, it's time to do some network upgrades, and first on the list is setting up my new wireless access points. Right here in front of me is an Ubiquiti wireless access point, which I will eventually be setting up in a mesh network with the one that I currently have set up downstairs once I get some networking properly run through my house. As for today though, I'm going to run through the basics of what this thing even is. It's just a white box, pretty simple, and how to set one up, and later touch on why you'd want to go with a solution like this instead of just running with whatever your ISP provides. So you should definitely stick around since this will definitely be fun.
You smell that? It smells like a bit goblin.
So first up, let's just take a look at what this thing actually is. Unfortunately, I don't have the exact model number for this unit, nor the one I have downstairs, but I can confirm that both of these units support both 2.4 GHz and 5 GHz Wi-Fi networks, and are currently supported with Ubiquiti's latest firmware upgrades. I'll leave a link to the current version of these access points in the video description down below if you're curious about buying one for your network. But moving on, there really isn't much to this thing. It's just a white circle-shaped box with an Ubiquiti logo on it, a light that will shine through this crack to show you its status, and on the back you have this plate that you can swap out with an actual wall mounting bracket that I think comes with the original retail version. I don't have it again. I got the second hand from my brother, and inside this little hole right here, or little valley, whatever you want to call it, there's a Ethernet port over here which supplies power over Ethernet, and a reset button, kind of hard to see from there, and a little cutout here to let an Ethernet cable get through after you've already wall mounted it or ceiling mounted it. So at this point, let's take a look at how to actually use one of these things. As with any piece of tech, you will need to start with the physical setup, and this is actually pretty simple to get going. All you really need for this is a network cable that's connected to a power over Ethernet injector, which is included with the box, and I do have one with me today. It's just got two ports, a LAN port, and then a PoE port that goes to the access point to supply power to. Or you can even connect it to a switch that supports power over Ethernet outputs. Though if you want to go that route, keep in mind that those switches usually cost a little bit more than their non-PoE counterparts. So like I was saying, the setup of these is actually pretty simple. First, you take the power over Ethernet injector, plug the power cord into a wall, then you plug your Ethernet cable into the PoE port on the injector, then you plug the other end of that cable into the Ethernet port on the access point. A little tricky there. I don't have another Ethernet cable to show you, but then you take another Ethernet cable, plug it into this LAN port, plug it into your switch, then you're off to the races. You will see a white light flashing on this little ring right here around the Ubiquiti logo. White light flashing means that it's just booting up and getting ready to go. And when it's finally booted up, you will see a solid white ring around the Ubiquiti logo, which means that it's fully booted up, but does not yet have configuration applied to it. It is at this point that you should be able to mount it wherever you want, on the wall, ceiling, wherever you want to put it, and you can start managing everything through software over the network. But I'd recommend, if you're not quite comfortable setting these things up yet, or at least if it's your first time, to leave it unmounted so you can easily pop it off, click the reset button, and start from scratch. Again, these models do come with a wall or ceiling mount brackets that you can screw into the wall for a clean, reliable mount. But again, I regrettably don't have these since I got them secondhand. So instead, an alternative I'd recommend is the command strip hook and loop fastener adhesive strips to mount them on ceilings. The advantage of this is that it's less destructive to your wall or ceiling and is easily replaceable if the strips are damaged or lost. Now that your access point is powered on, waiting for configuration, and possibly mounted, all we have left to do is configure it via software over the network. And Ubiquiti provide this nifty little controller software called Unify that you can install on any device you choose. You can even install it on your desktop if you want to, since it doesn't need to be running 24/7. It only really needs to run when you want to make changes or add a new Wi-Fi device. What I prefer to do is to install the controller software on one of these very handy Raspberry Pis. Since the controller software doesn't need to be on a super high performance machine or anything, they're very low powered and I can leave it on and access it from whatever device I choose. All you have to do is install Raspberry Pi OS, just like you would with any other Pi, which you can easily find tutorials for how to do so by searching the web. And after you've done that, I will meet you in the command line. Okay, so now we're getting into installing the actual Unify controller software on a Raspberry Pi. On the left, I have a terminal SSH into my Raspberry Pi. Only thing I've done to it so far is change the Pi password, as you should do with any Raspberry Pi. And I've also updated it to make sure I'm on the latest and greatest software for Raspberry Pi OS. And on the right here, I have Firefox open with a guide to install the Unify software. I'm on raspberrytips.com. I'll put the link to this guide in the video description below so you know where to go to. All right. So now we have the actually installing Unify controller software. So let's scroll down a little bit. So it says here you have two options. You can download the official package directly, or you can add the repository, which is what I'm going to do here. I'm just going to copy this command. Got to get the key, copy paste. Next step is sudo apt update. So the next step from here is to apt install the Unify software. So we just do sudo apt install Unify, hit enter, type Y for yes. And that will take a hot minute, so I'll check back when that's done. All right, now we're done with that. Next step is just to check if the service has started. So that command is sudo systemctl status unify. It is deactivating. Why did it fail? Because it doesn't have Java, and that is what comes up next. Cannot locate Java home. So what we do here is sudo apt install openjdk8 jre. This will be another big download and will probably take a little bit longer. All right, now that that's done, we can go ahead and start the service. Start Unify. Kaboom. And if we go back up to that status command, you see that's actually running. So now if we head over to our web browser, you go to the IP address of your Pi, :8443, and make sure that the address has HTTPS at the start of it, because this is an encrypted connection. It's a self-signed cert, so let's just, accept the risk, because, whatever. And look at that. The Unify controller is, well, it's not set up, but it's working now. So now for controller name, I'm just going to call this controller. But anyways, we got to check this little checkbox for agreeing to the EULA. Click next. All right, so I messed up. So we're not going to sign in with our Ubiquiti account. We're just going to click switch to advanced setup, uncheck enable remote access, and then uncheck use your Ubiquiti account for local access. So now we need to create a local administrator account. I'm just going to call it root password, and then root email. So let's just do like root@example.com. So on this page, you have a couple options that you can check or uncheck depending on what you want. I'm going to leave both of these checked just to, run with the default options. On this page, you'll see a list of devices that can be controlled by the Unify software. In this case, we only have one Ubiquiti access point, and this IP address matches what I see on my DHCP leases. So we're just going to check this, hit next, Wi-Fi name. We're going to call it cool Y. Now let's do this. Cool Wi-Fi bro. That's the Wi-Fi name, Wi-Fi password. Cool Wi-Fi password. I'm going to check this box to combine both the 2 and 5 gigahertz networks together. That just makes it easier, but you can separate them out if you want. I'm going to leave this localization stuff alone because that's correct. Finish setup. And there we go. Look at that. So now we're at the Unify controller dashboard. We can see all the connected devices and clients. Right now, we don't have any clients on there. We have one access point. One thing I do want to mention is, since I had some old devices, okay, so now that the access point is set up, under firmware status, we do see that there's an update available. So let's just click on that, click confirm, and we'll give it a hot minute, and it should eventually update the firmware. All right, that was actually relatively quick. We can see that the firmware status is up to date now. The status over here is no longer, firmware updating or whatever. So yeah. So there's a lot more stuff that you can do here. Obviously, we saw the dashboard. You can see the topology. You can kind of move things around or whatever here and kind of, format your network in this thing. Unify devices is where we were just at. Clients, this will show anything that's connected to your Wi-Fi. Under statistics, once you give it a sec to load, this should show things like how much data has been downloaded over certain periods of time, like what the ping is, all that kind of fun stuff. All right, we'll pass on that for now since it's taking a while. We can also see insights, which will kind of be the same type of thing. You can also see alerts, which I would assume are things like, well, you can see firmware updates, new device has been added. I'm sure if devices go down or whatever, alerts would show up here as well. And then we have settings, which you can go in and, there's a little tutorial video. But you can go in here, add new Wi-Fi networks, change your current Wi-Fi network, change security settings, all that kind of fun stuff. And yeah, at this point, your Wi-Fi is set up. You can use it and connect to it from whatever device you want using the password that you selected. And there's really not much else to say about the UniFi controller software. It works pretty well, pretty easy to set up as you saw, and you can get a whole lot of insight into how your network's working and how it's shaped. So yeah, pretty easy to use. And I guess the last thing I'll say on this is that I kind of like this a little bit more than MikroTik's Router OS because this is a bit more of a guided experience and, in my opinion, a lot more user-friendly in comparison. So at this point, in case anyone is wondering, no, this video is not sponsored by Ubiquiti or anything like that. These access points were paid for by me and my dad, and honestly, I just love doing home networking stuff and really anything involving tech that makes my life easier and using a computer more enjoyable. It's really cool to me being able to spend like $100 or so and maybe like half an hour of time to drastically improve Wi-Fi performance compared to that of your standard wireless router from your ISP, which I can almost guarantee that massively sucks. And even if you're like, duh, cool story, bro, faster Wi-Fi isn't necessary and is a waste of money, well then you're wrong. Having actually snappy Wi-Fi really improves the experience of browsing the web on your phone, laptop, IoT devices, and anything else that just doesn't connect via an Ethernet cable. And a lot of devices these days just simply don't have any sort of wiring networking available built in. And I can also guarantee that you will notice a difference moving off of some dingy Wi-Fi solution to something more prosumer or professional. And again, this is not some sole endorsement for Ubiquiti that they're the end-all be-all for Wi-Fi, because they certainly aren't. But getting a dedicated device or devices for handling your Wi-Fi will be much better than a device that has lots of other capabilities built in. My brother has a theory for things like this. A device that can do many things will be average at best for all those things, and a device dedicated to one thing will perform much better for its purpose. This isn't necessarily true for everything, of course, and again, getting dedicated devices for everything isn't necessary, especially since a lot of those dedicated devices will cost more. But for something as integral as Wi-Fi, it's just worth putting the time and money into it when available. Now, before we close out today, I'd also like to mention that you don't need to use Ubiquiti hardware for this. There are plenty of other prosumer and small business-oriented companies like MikroTik that also make great solutions for things like this. MikroTik's products in particular are great, and they give you a lot more granular control over your devices, which lets you set up any of their networking gear to do whatever you want it to do. That being said, their software is a little rough around the edges in terms of usability, and takes a lot more knowledge about networking, bridging, switching, and all that fun stuff to get your gear set up properly. And although they do have an auto config tool, I've had bad luck with it personally, so your mileage may vary on that one. Between the two, I'd recommend Ubiquiti if you're not fully experienced with this stuff and don't have time to spend learning how to set up Wi-Fi essentially from scratch. But anyways, that's all I have for this one, and don't forget to like the video if you liked it, and dislike it if you didn't so I know to do better next time. Also subscribe if you did like it so you can keep up with my latest videos, and honestly it makes me feel happy seeing that number go up. You can leave your thoughts down in the comment section below, and hit me up on the Big Goblin Discord server with any questions or just to chat. I'm always open for that. And I will catch you in the next one.